Hi, aviation operations students. Happy Pi Day. We made a salted caramel apple pie in celebration, and when we're done here, I will see what that looks like. So let's head on to our presentation for this week. First, we're going to talk a little bit about this week for the day one. The topic is flight operations, but first we're going to talk a little bit. Since I'm catching up on the homework and the exam review, I wanted to go over a few topics with you. I had hoped to have the grades up by now. That hasn't happened. I'm finding out that catching up after 2 weeks is taking me more time than I thought, but I will continue to work on that. And as soon as I get the career list edited, I will get that out to you. I've got everything together, but I do also need to make sure that I edit it to make sure I have distinctly clear professions. And so that's the work I'm doing now on that. I'm grading the exams in little bits, and I hopefully should have everything posted for you. When I do, I will send out an email, and then if you have any questions about the grades, you can contact me. A few of the items that were gotten wrong, both in the homework and the exam. What is a benefit corporation? So I'll go over that in a little more detail. Social corporate responsibility, increasing risk, the Rodwell rule, not the Roswell rule, and a few comments on the draft budgets and how to fix those up. The biggest advice I could give you is read the entire question. Usually when many of the wrong answers were because people did not read the entire question. I also apologize for me requesting 2 things and it gave you 3. I deleted those third ones, but they showed up again. That's life. So when we look at social enterprise, and what we're doing here is we're looking at how we use our business in 2 ways. And part of that is to provide some benefit to the community, but also use that as marketing. There's nothing wrong with that. A good way to reach out into the community. So a social enterprise marries a social mission of a nonprofit with the market-driven approach of a business. It is a business, but it also has a social piece to it. So Tom's Shoes, you buy a pair of shoes and a pair of shoes goes to a kid that doesn't have any. Warby Parker does something similar with glasses. There's a lot of examples out there of these kind of things. It is a hybrid model, so it has social enterprise to address critical unmet basic needs, but it is also part of a business. Now, it may be nonprofit or it could be for-profit. They're not a distinct legal entity. They're an ideological approach tied to a business. So marrying commercial approaches with social good. And I bet, and there's a list, there's a source here explaining what B Corps are, so you could get more detail if it is still unclear. There are 7 basic principles of a social enterprise business. It should be cause-driven. It should also be financially and economically sustainable. If investors put money in, they will receive a return on their investment amount only. The rest of the money will go back into the social enterprise. Any profit generated stays in the company for expansion and improvement. This is required by law in a nonprofit, but if it's not a nonprofit, this is still the basic principle that you are using. You're not using a social enterprise to make a lot of money. Things like being gender sensitive, racially sensitive, environmentally conscious. Making sure that when you're doing something that you're looking at all those lenses, even if you're focusing on environment. Are you portraying all male hikers or skiers in the things you do? Are you being sensitive to gender? Are you being sensitive to race? Are you making sure that you are addressing other social ills as well, even though your focus may be on one thing? Your workforce should be receiving market wages and better working conditions. I can tell you that most people who work in nonprofits in Montana do not receive market wages or good working conditions. So part of this is, as a social enterprise, you're taking care of your employees as well, and that you're giving people an opportunity to find joy in their work. A benefit corporation is actually a certification put out by the nonprofit B Labs. So they can only be for-profit organizations, but they also must meet the standards for social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. The B Corp certification is distinction for social responsibility, much like Fair Trade and Organic. Ben & Jerry's is a B Corp, Cabot Creamery, New Belgium Brewing. I've also seen some other organic foods that I eat have a B Corp label on that. So that is an official certification from a nonprofit labs that evaluates that. Public Benefit Corporation. They are a legal incorporation only in certain states, allowing organizations to identify a purpose beyond maximizing shareholder value. It creates a mission, flexibility, and that mission hopefully can continue beyond initial offering. Exactly how they form is different in every state. And in Montana, it must create a general public benefit, a material positive impact on society and the environment. Kickstarter is an example of this. Patagonia is an example of this. King Arthur Flour. So there are others out there as well. And it's only been in Montana for a little over 5 years. Social corporate responsibility. Part of it is doing things like taking care of the environment and taking care of your employees. But there's two pieces to social corporate responsibility. It should tie to your mission. So if you adopt a cause that has no relation to your mission, then that might be an issue. So you need to make sure you tie it to the mission because it gives you marketing opportunities and people have to know about it. You could be using electric cars and everything you can to be as green as you can, but if you don't tell anybody about it, that's an lost opportunity for marketing. So using green technology is an example, providing benefits to employees, even if you don't have to, or maybe providing a little bit better. Partnering with local nonprofits, just like Summit Aviation partners with, I can't think of them right now, but the organization that has the cancer camps that feed into our aviation program. Hunting Guide might work with, say, the Elk Foundation, or any organization that works on wilderness or game preservation. A lot of the reason we have as much game we have now is because the hunters are making sure of that. Also, be very careful in your terminology. A couple of people put the term lower class when we were talking about lower income. Lower income does not necessarily mean they're lower class. We want to be careful how we use our terms so that they're not going to be a problem for people. Another issue, this was out of the Flight Operations Manual, is things that increase risk and decrease performance. So task loading. That is the responsibilities you have when you are in the cockpit, or if you're doing something else elsewhere in the aircraft that you've been assigned to do. You don't want to overload. You don't want to have so many things to do that you miss something going wrong. But you also don't want to underload, because then you're going to lose track and get bored. So you want to find a balance in there. Additive conditions. So if you have task loading, and now you add to that by adding more tasks, or doing things like listening to music, talking to a flight attendant, other things like that, those can cause distractions. Again, they increase risk, decrease performance. Crew factors, fatigue, stress, fear, illness. Have they had a recent bad experience? Lateness, rushing, all those things can have a negative impact. And when you have a negative impact on a flight crew, you're also increasing your risk. And then another thing that's been talked about in the FOM is the group mindsets and attitudes, such as press on regardless, such as trying to be macho. Those can negatively impact the performance of an individual and probably impact the whole crew. So those are things to keep in mind. You're going to be, later on this program, you'll be looking at managing crew resources and how that works. These are good things to keep in mind. The Rodwell rule. In this case, it's the do's and don'ts of delegation. You're selecting the right person for the job, and that is someone who is 80% ready. Set them up for success and provide an opportunity to grow for growth. I used to have a lot of work experience people working for me when I ran a nonprofit. And one of the things I would do is give them a task that was just very slightly out of their reach and give them the support to do it. Then when they knew that task, I would add another task. And so you help people grow, you increase their skill set. They are a better asset for your organization, and they're going to feel better. And remember to reserve for yourself only the tasks that you alone can do. That doesn't mean you're not going to help out. It doesn't mean that you're not going to do things. But if you can focus on the things you need to do, because as a manager, there's always more to do than you can handle. Anything you can pass on, but the big thing is to make sure, in addition, that you're setting them up for success, that you're providing support. So one of the things I want you to think is what this would look like in your business, how you would select the right person and how you would set them up for success. The draft budget. One thing I want to talk about here is drafts. So we're working on a business plan. And if you get 100% on a draft and you turn that same product in at the end, you are probably not going to get 100% on it. Drafts is just looking for the content. Are you getting the basic idea and an opportunity to provide feedback? Also, exactly what your business is going to look like is changing as you go through. So you need to make sure in the end that the final product all fits together, that you have all the pieces. For example, we've now done marketing. We've now done adding that third employee. So you want to make sure that those are included in your budget. I would say my most common question was, where are your airplanes coming from? You aren't showing loan payments, or you're not showing that you got money to help you pay those loan payments. You always need to remember that the bills are on the first of the month. So when you start your business, you're already going to have a back stock of supplies. Your airplanes are going to have to be ready. Your rent is going to have to be paid. All those things have to be done in advance. So make sure that all that money, anything that comes in ahead of time, is going to get put in that first month, because that is the starting balance for your business. Any loans or investments, remember the income goes in that income on top and the loan payment goes down in financial obligations below. Research rent and utilities, look at Craigslist, look on Google. But for those of you saying $80 in utilities when you're going to be running a full business there, that's about enough for a studio apartment that is not going to run, you're probably looking $100+ a month for every 1,000 square feet. And then if you have electrical tools and things like that, that's going to be on top of that. So try and get a little more realistic idea. I'm not going to be pinging you on dollars, but when your orders of magnitude off, I am going to call you on that. And again, putting those expenses as we go along and we build pieces of the plan, make sure they all are fit into your budget. In the end, you should have one final plan, and your staffing and where your airplanes come from and your marketing and your budget should all fit together, should all tell one story. So that's enough on review. If you have any questions on anything, please let me know. On to flight operations. We're looking at some of the types of flight operations: charter, air taxi, aircraft rental, leasing, services, ferry services, air cargo, air ambulance, space or low orbit near space. Every one of these has different markets and also has different regulations. So you need to be aware of all of those if you're looking at going into the business, to make sure you're complying with the law, as well as what the regular business requirements are of these. So when you think of air taxi or air charter, what you're thinking about there is that you're renting the whole airplane. So if someone else is flying, it's kind of like Uber or Lyft. And sometimes you can even share that. There are apps out there that do share some of those seats, as opposed to buying a ticket on an airline where you're actually buying one seat on that flight. So generally, it's focusing on individual private aircraft. It can also be used for urgent or time-sensitive freight or cargo that can't go by one of the regular. Air ambulance is another. So any form of air, basically transportation, where someone is renting the whole airplane, or several people might be renting it together, is an air taxi or a charter. It's also known as executive charter, jet charter. It is in general aviation. And it is governed by Part 135 for the most part, where airlines are governed by Part 121. And again, it's kind of a catch-all phrase to the renting of an entire aircraft versus a seat or sending cargo with other cargo on an aircraft, for example. Flight instruction is another use. Aerial patrol. There are a lot of different ways to do aerial patrol listed here. There's even more beyond that, but also consider the use of drones. At the border, they're using balloons with cameras on them. So while aerial patrol has historically been aircraft of one kind or another, now the potential for unmanned vehicles, whether it's cameras on balloons or it's drones, provide some other options. There's times when one might be more efficient than the other. Other aerial advertising, skywriting and banner towing, aerial application, sightseeing, helicopter tours, gliding and sailplanes, ballooning, parachuting, ultralights, parasailing. It's not technically a vehicle, but it's aviation. Aircraft demonstrations, medical evacuation, search and rescue, firefighting, fish spotting and game spotting, but you have to be very careful about the regulations in the area you're in that apply to that. You can game spot and you can land and tell someone where you saw the game, but you cannot, in Montana, you cannot spot game from an aircraft and use a radio to tell people on the ground where that game is. Not that it doesn't happen, but by law, you can't do that. And aerial photography. So that is the first part of aviation operations. Let that set with you a little bit, and then we will get into other areas of aviation operations and some of the issues we have in that area. Thank you very much. And again, as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you had a happy Pi Day. And for those of you who celebrate, have a great St. Patrick's Day.